In de straten van de Britse stad Birmingham zoeken radicaal-rechtse en linkse betogers de confrontatie. Als reactie op de toenemende terreurdreiging omschrijft de Britse overheid radicalisering als een proces waarin mensen op weg zijn terrorist te worden. Het bestempelt radicalen tot verdachten en radicaal denken tot gevaar. Dit is Tegenlicht. Welkom in de zogenaamde Jihadi-Hauptstadt. Een portret van binnenuit.
Yeah, right outside in front of the new library. Yeah, but aren't you coming to this demo? Are you staying where you are? Okay, all right. Okay. Near it. They're basically over at the other end. They're going to stay there. They're not coming here because they've been separated.
Where's the Nazis?
Over the other end. Right at the other
That
end.
way?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll fight them all, I will. I'll go straight into the middle of the mixing up with them all. All of them. I'm a warrior.
De eerste Pegida-demonstratie in Engeland wordt in Birmingham gehouden en laat zien hoe de aanhang van extreem rechts groeit. Om hiertegen te protesteren gaan lokale moslims en andere minderheden op weg richting de demonstratie. Onze gids Jahan introduceert ons bij de leden van de moslimgemeenschap.
Hey bro. There's my friend Jahan.
Hey dude.
So far so good. No kick-off yet.
We're all on that side. We're all going over there now.
When they split up, they're going to start walking down, and then any Muslims that they see, women or whatever, they're going to attack them.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is that we're not going to confront them. We're just going to act as a deterrent.
Those motherfuckers want to chop my head off. What, you want to chop my head off? You silly idiot.
Everybody relax, man. Everybody relax. Everybody relax. There's Paul Goulding. There's Paul Goulding. There's the main dog. Have a good time. Enjoy yourselves. Proud to be British, mate. Proud to be British. Yeah? Proud to be British, mate.
Do you know why Britain first was here today in Birmingham? No. Well, it's because of a Henry Jackson report, Henry Jackson Society report. And in that report, they stated that there has been a very large number of convictions in this city. And ideally, this city is the Jihadi capital of the country. And a number of journalists also repeated that line. So that's why they're here. It's not because of recent attacks, for instance, Manchester and so forth.
Yeah, let's go guys, come on everybody out. We're gonna get blocked in here.
They're basically saying that the city of Birmingham is the Jihadi capital of the country.
Birmingham, de tweede stad van het Verenigd Koninkrijk, heeft de grootste moslimgemeenschap van het land. De oude industriële wijken in de binnenstad hebben een etnisch en cultureel diverse bevolking. Na de recente terroristische aanslagen in Europa kreeg Birmingham in de media de naam een broedplaats voor terroristen te zijn. Een stad met no-go-zones voor niet-moslims.
How come Birmingham gets the name Jihadi Capital?
The problem is that there has been several cases of people being, arrested on terrorism charges, and who have specifically come from Birmingham. If you go back to the 90s, people like myself, and also you have to understand that a lot of people that were arrested on so-called terrorism charges have been released without any charge. So, but the figures stick. Oh, where's the driver of that car? That gold car? Where is he? This is the person that drives up and down Ladypool Road, yeah? Blasting his horn. You joker. When you have a very negative, irresponsible media in the UK, and then the international media picks up on it, talking about no-go zones in Birmingham, which is absolutely rubbish. And everybody's welcome to come to Birmingham and walk around freely. How's it going, bro? You all right? Yeah, thanks, bro.
Too many people coming here on the cars. They're coming on their quad bikes, they're coming on fast cars, and this is a residential area.
That's right, yeah.
You know?
And then motorbikes and the quad bikes, there's 3 of them out here the other day. Revving.
You might just join in with the festivities.
I'm Muslim anyway.
Yeah, have some samosas and kebabs.
Oh, that's why I live here.
All right then, take care. Bye.
What kind of work you do with the younger people?
I go to schools and colleges and I talk a lot to young people. I deliver projects for young people, basically around the issues of gangs, drugs, criminality and extremism as well. I've got experience in all of those fields, as you know, so I'm kind of well placed to be able to talk about these things. And my objective and my mission is to create, is to sort of, help the younger generation to get through the complexities of their life and all the different issues that they have, and try to impart some of my knowledge to them, to help them to understand what's going on.
Na de aanslagen in Londen in 2007 werden er door de Britse regering nieuwe antiterrorisme-strategieën geïntroduceerd. Er vond een omslag in het denken plaats. Werd terrorisme voorheen als een bedreiging uit het buitenland gezien, nu gaat men uit van een binnenlandse dreiging. En precies die mensen die opgroeiden in de achterstandswijken zouden wel eens de terroristen van morgen kunnen zijn.
Schedule 7 is a power which the government has given to the police at ports of entry, international ports of entry, where they can stop anyone coming in or out of the country. They stopped me, they held me for about 5 hours, they took my DNA swab, they took my fingerprints, my photographs at 45-degree angles, so not just there and there, all the way around, up, down, fingerprints, palm prints, and then just ask me these kind of questions, and it was just, this was, I didn't get out until like 2 o'clock in the morning. And I was vexed. I was fuming by the time I got out. I was really angry, really not upset. I was actually angry. I was livid. And I remember thinking that had I not known the little that I know about Islam, I would be ripe for any extremist terrorist to recruit me right now, because I was just enraged. You feel as though your dignity has been taken away from you. You're made to feel like a criminal, and you haven't done anything wrong.
Are they profiling?
Oh, there's no other way to describe it. When the majority of those that are stopping look Muslim, then they are profiling. So when I travel now, I shave my beard off just to avoid it. Which is a shame. I shouldn't have to shave my beard off, but unfortunately I do.
Als onderdeel van de nieuwe antiterrorisme-maatregelen werd in Birmingham het antiradicaliseringsprogramma Prevent ingevoerd. Dat wil voorkomen dat kwetsbare individuen aangetrokken worden tot terrorisme. In het begin richtte men zich vooral op de achterstandswijken en daarbinnen vooral op scholen, wijkorganisaties en hun leiders.
Prevent, when it was first rolled out, everybody was for it. I mean, it sounded like a great thing, this. In which, if we can intervene early enough and prevent an atrocity from happening, I mean, who's going to disagree with that? Who? I mean, you just cannot disagree with that. It's perfect sense. It makes so much. It's logic. It's just stupidity to try to argue against it. However, when you see the application of it, then there's a problem. When you have the counter extremism and terrorism bill that was rolled out in 2015. In which it obliges teachers and doctors and frontline staff to effectively spy upon their fellow citizens and to pass information on to the government and say, oh yeah, we think this guy here has been radicalised. The problem with that, however, is that you're talking about a teacher or a doctor. They're not a counter-terrorism expert. They're not even experts on Islam. Never mind experts on counter-terrorism. So they know very little. And what they do know, they pick up from the media, they pick up from politicians. This idea that, he shouted Allahu Akbar before he committed his act of atrocity. We call out Allahu Akbar, 10 times a day in our prayer. 20 times a day.
Sparkhill, Borsall Heath, Sparkhill, Sparkbrook is kind of a lower socio-economic area, but it's a great community to live in. You've got parents, grandparents, children now bringing up their kids here. So there's a real sense of belonging in this area, and then all of a sudden you're labelled as this area where there's an interest for the wrong reason, not the right reason. Prevent is about developing future role models, but you don't do it the way the government has gone about it, which is label a community first and then throw money at it. That's not how you do it. You work with the community. We've always been on the borderline of being able to provide, because we're a women's organisation, we work with women, and Prevent sees women. Recently, there's a bigger onus on having women participate, but we as an organisation made a conscious decision that we didn't want to prevent money, and the reason was because we felt we know what this community is about, we know what this community needs. We're not going to deliver something that is dictated by government to deliver.
A lot of people will ask us, you know, some of the things we do, is it funded by Prevent money? And we have to say no, 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 to reassure them that we're not, you know, part of that agenda.
A lot of people didn't want to share data because they felt if they shared their details, somehow or other they'd be on registers and stuff. They're almost like giving their information to say, I'm part of this problem, rather than part of the solution.
Het Britse overheidsbudget voor Prevent wordt geschat op €45 miljoen en wordt omgeven door geheimzinnigheid. Het geld wordt verdeeld via de lokale overheid. Maar in plaats van sociale controle te vergroten, lijkt het ook verdeeldheid te veroorzaken.
Thank you. Very nice coffee here, I must say. I work in the community here in Sparkbrook. I run a project called Kick It, Pathways to Recovery. The project started from the community here. We have a lot of issues around vulnerabilities. So we have issues like drug dependency, mental health, high poverty in this area. It's a very highly poor area. Everybody knows what we do, and we're very well trusted in the community. And we're upfront about everything we do, like we're working with substance misuse, like working with Prevent, because we address issues of Prevent as safeguarding. So we look at it as protecting and safeguarding vulnerable people.
So I've been filming in this area, and I talked to a lot of people who know you, and everybody say that you're doing an amazing work.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, but people also say that you take some money from Prevent.
We have tried an approach through the community, through the mosque, to try and raise funds to run the project, to protect and safeguard it, but we didn't get any luck. And the advantage of getting funding through Prevent is that it allows us to do what we're good at and help our community and protect and safeguard the vulnerable individuals. And it's not about spying. It's not about turning against and being kind of like an enemy of your religion or Islam or anything like that. It's nothing to do with that. These kids are going to mess about now. So you might as well turn the camera off for a bit. They're going to be very rude. Behave yourself, son.
We're good, yeah?
Shh, behave yourself. Be good, be good. No, Holland.
Amsterdam. Bien.
Oh, hey.
The Prevent duty came about after the July the 7th bombings. The efforts by the governments, past and present, was to look at extremism within the Muslim community and look at the Muslim community through a lens of extremism. The same Labour government that had taken us into war in Iraq, that didn't recognize that foreign policy was the key player cited by the terrorists in the videos they made before they carried out the attacks, that we are doing this not because of our ideology. In fact, they don't even quote very much ideology because they didn't know very much in terms of Islamic ideology. But very much they talk about we are responding to the Iraq and Afghanistan invasions. And that culminated over the years, which included continuous occupations, continuous bombings of Iraq, Afghanistan, and then later Syria, into the Prevent duty, which became a law under the Counterterrorism Act of 2015. All of this is like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut in finding what is the cause, what's making young British Muslims and some far-right people turn towards violence. The truth is there are a whole series of factors, but what we're not told is the effects that Britain hasn't told its population that we are at war. And we have been at war continuously, at least since the beginning of 2002. If you imagine in Raqqa or wherever, in Mosul, young group of people who decided that they were going to leave the UK and join ISIS, or just local Syrians or Iraqis, are bombed by British, American, Russian, French, take your pick, coalition forces, and a bomb lands. What happens when a bomb lands? It explodes, it's incendiary, it's explosive, it kills, it maims, it decapitates, it incinerates, it devastates. And we're not shown those images. We're not shown the images of children with half a head missing, with an arm missing, with women crying and inconsolable. We're not shown those images, but the images do exist. Somebody somewhere along the line has seen that type of imagery. We're not told in the radicalization story about any of that. We're told that it's because this is disenfranchised, because they don't feel part of society, they don't know how great it is to be a British citizen or a Belgian citizen. They don't understand their own faith. All of that is true. But what sent them over the edge? That's the question that's not being asked, and the answer is not being delivered.
In the early 90s, I was given a video cassette, and it was called Massacres in Bosnia and Croatia. I put this video cassette on, and it was horrible. I mean, it really, really shook me to the core. It was just so overwhelming for me. And at that moment, I just sort of, there's no pre-planning. I just thought, right, I need to do something more than just give them aid. So I joined the Mujahideen forces of the Bosnian army. And then later on, after that, I also went to Afghanistan. I also went to Kashmir on the Indian border. I was young, I was impressionable. So obviously, what they were saying clicked with me, because I was already angry. And because I came from a violent background, it was very easy for me to make that transition. So yes, I do understand that. And what I do is that's what I bring to the table. When I talk to young people, I don't use the approach of, oh, why are you saying this? Why are you saying that? You shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. No, you shouldn't have these feelings. No, I say to them, I get it. I know what you're saying.
No, yeah, I still live on the road, still working with Ren.
With who?
Ren.
I've been called all sorts recently, I've been called a preventwala, a police informant. I'm working for the feds. Yeah, I'm recruiting for jihadis. I don't work for Prevent. I don't work for any government organization. I'm an independent. But at the same time, I'm a pragmatic person as well. Because Prevent now is part of the safeguarding strategy. When I go into a school, I don't go there to promote Prevent. Everybody that knows me knows I have many issues with Prevent. But at the same time, I keep that door open.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن
Assalamu alaikum. How are you, Asim? I know you're back from Iraq and you're going to be tired. I know that, you spent 2 days already in London, and basically the question that I had for you was that since we're in the neighborhood...
I'm out the area at the moment.
No worries. All right, Asim. It was around these streets. It was a young man who was playing a video of a British contractor who had his head cut off by militants in Iraq. His friends were sat around laughing at this image, and I just found it quite disturbing. It was upstairs at that building where the snooker club was, and that's where I'd arranged for them to play snooker at night and keep off the streets. And I'd run that snooker program for maybe about 2 or 3 years. So that building for me really marks a change and shift in my own life.
Jahan, can you describe your relationship with the media?
Yeah, it started off quite difficult, to be fair. Regarding terrorism, it did. The thing is, most people don't really want a truth, they just want a story. We want the truth to be told. And if there is a problem, we want to know about it. We want people to accept our side of the argument. We're not apologists. We're not saying that there isn't extremists in our midst. Because by the very nature of our work, we're actually trying to tackle, extremist behavior, because it affects Muslims as well, affects every member of society.
Really peckish, so I'm all right, bro.
Nah, come on,
bro,
please.
Please.
Do I look shy?
Have some.
I'm seriously, I couldn't, man.
Come on, then.
I've ate so much.
Guys, just dig in.
So these guys have spoken to Shahid, but
Yeah, Master Sheriff.
What about Prevent?
Yeah, he talked about. Just did an interview with Mozambique this morning about the same thing.
For me, I don't want any involvement with Prevent whatsoever, and I've had a lot of offers.
What kind of offers?
Just to push whatever it is that they want pushed, whatever agenda it is. But that's not something that I would do. It's not something that I could do either. It's for certain people in the community that can probably do it, but for a lot of us, we wouldn't and we couldn't. Even if we wanted to, we couldn't.
Why?
Because of how it's seen. It's seen as a toxic thing. And anybody that is involved in it, anybody that is part of it, the community will literally want nothing to do with you. They won't take you seriously. They'll chew you up and they'll spit you out. Imagine from the start, you're growing up in an area that you're told is a hotbed for extremism. Why? That's dangerous for these kids. If you keep telling these kids that they're something, or they're from something, or they're part of something, they might start to believe it.
Yeah.
And if they start to believe it, that's really dangerous. How long since 9/11? 16 years. You've been saying the same thing every time, every day, every interview, every time I speak to guys like you, every news outlet that comes, it says you have to just sit there and have to say the same thing. And everybody now, we're just sick of saying about it. It's almost getting apologetic. Do you know what I mean? And it's not about that. It shouldn't be about that. Every time something happens, my phone and his phone especially won't stop ringing. Oh, a Muslim did this. What do you think about it? Who cares what I think about it? Do you know what I mean? Why do you need to know what Muslims think about it? I don't know. It's like they want us to why do we have to publicly condemn it?
I'm born here, this is home, innit? This is home. This is all I know. I'm British. What? How much more can I tell you?
We share the same values. Any values that, if you ask someone to compile a list, all right, what are British values and stuff, and they're gonna come out with all the nice. They're not gonna mention the colonialism and all of this and that. They'll be like, oh no, being nice to people. We like our ice cream in the summer. We like fish and chips. Like, hey, me too. Do you know what I mean? Everything that is considered British is me. This is Britain. Take a look at this. What country you're watching from? This is Britain. Do you know what I mean? This is how we look like. Everybody looks different, but we're all here. We share the same values, and we're a big part of the society, of the country, and that needs to be represented in British values.
Definitely.
Sinds 2011 richt het Prevent-programma zich steeds meer op het niet-gewelddadige extremisme en het gedachtegoed van radicalen. Er worden trainingsprogramma's ingevoerd binnen sociale en onderwijsinstellingen, waarbij lijsten gehanteerd worden met gedragskenmerken die zouden kunnen duiden op radicalisering. Malia Boatia was voorzitter van de Nationale Studentenvakbond en is nu samen met de Lerarenvakbond betrokken bij de campagne Studenten zijn geen verdachten. Wij werken hier niet aan mee.
We're all concerned with questions around security, and we all want to solve the problem and to ensure the safety of everybody in this country and worldwide. But this is absolutely not the way to do so, by stigmatizing and targeting a particular community, by effectively leading a witch hunt and suspicion everywhere. We are not going to solve these questions. And so obviously when I was elected as president, we helped seal that, and we ensured that there was absolutely no compromising on this question. The right-wing media in particular, what they choose to run with, that it's just such a perfect story that this Muslim head of the union is also the one opposing the government's counter-terrorism strategy. So we gained a lot more heat during my presidency, but at the same time, a lot more people were informed. And what came of that is, I'd come out of a mosque during Ramadan, and Muslim women would approach me and saying, this is what happened to my son, this is what happened to my cousin, can you help us? How do I deal with this case? Can I talk to a lawyer about it? It meant, I'd go into schools and I'd hear what parents have had to undergo, teachers have had to undergo, and have been exposed to. And so I think in many ways it helped raise such awareness and understanding that this policy is corrupt and that you are not a bad person for calling it out for what it is, which is Islamophobic.
Latifa, since you are in the education system, what do you see as the impact of something like Prevent?
They just ask you, all your ideas. The pupils are asked. Basically everybody is a suspect, and they start really advertising about it. So really, they kill the natural way of behaving of either the pupils or the staff. So everybody is watching everybody. We are becoming watched, basically. Most schools, they have cameras in the classrooms.
In the classroom?
In the classrooms, yeah. And so that they know exactly what's going on. And you become, I become really worried about what I am going to say. When I just want to give advice to the children, they say, oh, no, you're not allowed to say this, you're not allowed to say that. If I find that a child, for example, has done really a bad thing to a girl, like a bad touch or something, I say, come on, does really your religion allow you to do that? Did you think 1 second about you as a Muslim boy doing this? Imagine if it were your sister. It doesn't have to be only for Muslims, it is for applies, but I apply it to him because I know exactly how important normally the teachings he had, either from the family or from the faith or from the school teacher. If he were Muslim, he would have taught him this. So instead of using this faith and this religion to work for a better education and advanced progress on this, they are using it to do it against. They say, oh, no, you're not allowed to talk about Islam. We become really terrorized.
Censored.
Yeah.
De methode van preventie is gebaseerd op de overtuiging dat we toekomstig geweld kunnen voorkomen. Mensen krijgen de opdracht om verdachte gedragingen van individuen te melden bij de overheid.
How do you prove that someone has the intention to maybe do something?
Absolutely, you can't prove it. And even if someone, you might have the idea, you might even have the intention, but then when it comes time to carry out, you're thinking, hold on, what am I doing here? And you check yourself when the reality, when it's there, and you stop, and you haven't committed a crime. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of armed robberies that haven't happened because someone's thought, actually, I'm not going to do this. And they've gone and walked off and done something else. So there's been many crimes in which someone's going to commit a crime, and I'm not going to do this. So to preemptively criminalise someone, that is problematic in itself.
I was in Afghanistan in 2001 in the summer. I moved there to live and work. The United States-led coalition started to bomb when I was there as a result of the 9/11 attacks. The Americans had dropped leaflets all over Afghanistan and northern Pakistan, offering bounties of $5,000 for each foreign terrorism suspect that a person may decide is one. And so I think I was sold over initially for a bounty. I saw people beaten to death. I saw people tortured. I was tortured myself and humiliated in ways it's very, very difficult to describe. But then I was sent to Guantanamo and spent most of my time in solitary confinement. I was held in American custody in total for 3 years. I was never charged. I was never taken to court. I was never convicted. In fact, I've been compensated. We as people who have been targeted in one way or the other, and I talk about myself more than a lot of other people, I'm a victim of the government's policy over the past 2 decades. You want us to fix the problem that you created, which included victimizing us and targeting us and abusing us. You want us to come along now to fix your problem. Yeah, there's going to be a huge amount of mistrust. We don't trust you at all. And we don't trust you because law after law you've passed has targeted us. measure after measure, being stopped at the airport, Schedule 7 stops constantly happen.
So can you just tell us why we're here today?
So I'm here today, and the people here today, in the case of my colleague Mohammed Rabbani, who's the international director of CAGE, he essentially has been prosecuted for refusing to hand over his passwords to his electronic devices under the Schedule 7 of the Terrorism Act, and he was protecting privileged client information of a client who had been severely tortured and given that information as a trust to my colleague. So in Britain in 2017, you can be prosecuted as a terrorist and not have committed an act of terrorism. Rather, you were doing something that if, say, a journalist or a doctor or a lawyer or indeed a human rights worker was doing, you would not have been prosecuted. You would not have been set upon by the state. Okay, Salam alaikum. Can I get your attention, please, people? The last time that I was here at Westminster Magistrates was when I came around the back way. In a police car, and I was being prosecuted under terrorism, and it gave me a great deal of emotional pride and courage and a boost to see that people had come out in numbers to support somebody they knew.
By the way, just to answer your question for you, still
There was initially an understanding that actually Muslim women were going to be, they would be the ones that would de-radicalize their men, their brothers, their cousins, their uncles, their fathers, their sons, but they would also be the ones to provide us that information. And then when that didn't work out for them, suddenly, post-statutory duty, that narrative was flipped on its head, and what we see is that women are seen as the problem, that it's the Muslim women that stay with their children at home, you know, that bring up their children, the ones that homeschool their children are the problem. That is the root of radicalization. They're the ones that are turning these children into terrorists. And so you see that really the narrative just relates to whatever fits and legitimizes the existence of the program. The damage that is done is an amplified sense of double oppression, that you deal with the brunt of Islamophobia, but the misogyny as well, internally, and the sense of dehumanization because you are just a vessel for the state in whatever you're needed for. I was elected as the president of the National Union of Students. I was the first woman of colour. I was also the first Muslim at a time where it was incredibly unpopular to be so, particularly in public life. And so the backlash that followed my election was unprecedented. I was painted as an ISIS sympathiser, anti-Semite, anti-police, anti-everything, pretty much. My life was literally in danger. The levels of threats that I received internationally, it wasn't even just the UK. As a Muslim, as a person of colour, you getting involved in political life will mean feeling the full brunt of racism and Islamophobia. For Muslim women in particular, they just thought, you don't even wear the hijab, like you're not even visibly Muslim. This is the kind of treatment that you dealt with. What hope is there for us? Why on earth, how are we supposed to engage in the politics of this country and internationally if this is what we need to expect?
You used to work with Prevent.
I advised the government on Prevent. I was paid for some work, but I felt like I was hitting my head against a brick wall. They weren't listening. They had their own set of objectives and aims. So we have had a number of independent programs and certain influential members of community who are willing to talk to other people to ensure they don't throw their lives away. And I think that that is an achievement in itself. Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for coming. One of the issues that we currently have and have had for so long is this idea of a British Muslim identity. And it's actually synonymous with the Second World War to some degree. Because as a young man, when I was growing up, one of the questions that I was posed is, what did your grandfather or father ever do for Britain they did nothing, and you should piss off back home to where you come from. And I'm sure that many of you are familiar with that kind of language, those phrases. So British identity is very closely intertwined with the idea of the Second World War, because Britain has an imperial history, and the bar and the standard here is, if you're truly British, you actually did something for this country. Now, in the Battle of Dunkirk, it was such a bad situation that British officers said, we need to recruit these brown men. We've got to recruit these Muslims and these Indians, because they've showed a high level of discipline and composure when everyone else around them had lost theirs. These boys can fight. Britain recruits 2.5 million Indians, of which 600,000 are Muslim. The vast majority are from the area now that is now part of Pakistan, okay? So we are more or less the descendants of those people. And this is what they look like. And the one right on the far right, he looks basically 13, 14 years old. Very, very young boy, okay? If I was to make a security assessment based on our history, then I would say that we pose more of a threat to the Middle East than the Middle East poses to us. Because well over 100 years, we've been playing all sorts of sinister, malicious games in the Middle East. We've invaded them. We've interfered with them. We've gassed them. We've bombed them, right? We've wiped out civilian compounds. We've killed innocent people. But no Middle Eastern country has ever bombed Britain, okay? So who poses who more of a threat? We pose more of a threat to them than they do to us. And yet we're continually saying, hey, those little brown people in the mud, they just want to kill us all. Yeah, they want to kill us because we keep bombing them. If you keep bombing people for 100 years, bomb, 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 and then they want to kill you back, it's just natural human reaction. You don't need Islam or an ideology to make you want to seek revenge. That's a natural human characteristic. There are a lot of vulnerable men out there who are playing games like Call of Duty who think it's real life. And I'm afraid in real life, right, you have mine. This is modern day mine, TS-50, blow your foot straight off. You walk on that, it's gone, okay? And these are still in circulation in these very same war zones like Iraq and Syria. This is a fragmentation mine. You know, stick it on a small pole, and then they just literally they have a wire running to a tree, and you pull that, bang, that's it, you're a gunner. You got, you know, modern campaigns, you got mortars going off, 20mm rounds. That'll leave a gaping hole in you. Sniper bullet, .50 caliber with a tracer round, or a tracer on it. So just imagine all of these things flying at you. And then if that isn't bad enough, you've got bombs as well landing on your head. That's a World War II British Cooper bomb. It's a 20-pounder. Okay, high explosive. When this lands, you're gonna vaporize. Okay, so these are the kind of things that are out there. And you got kids playing Call of Duty out there, think they're ready for modern combat. You know? It's like, at least in Call of Duty, you can kind of like pause the war, go away for a pizza break, come back. And, you know, you can't do that in real life, you know. I mean, it's so difficult, actually, you know. I mean, maybe I should do a demonstration here. So that's your assault rifle. Now look how long it takes me to put the bullets in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'm a seasoned pro. But, you know, there are kids out there who've gone, and I remember one story of a returnee from Syria. He blew his friend's foot clean off. He says, I forgot to put the safety on. That's how well trained these dudes are, right? So knowing the reality of war and confusing it with the fantasy world, I think, is really important. And you know, you got these kids who've turned this game essentially into Call of Jihad. It's Call of Duty, mate. I've come across some of these young lads personally, and certainly those two boys who left from Birmingham, believe it or not, one of them was a Call of Duty fan. Like, his only experience of combat was his bedroom. That was it, right? And I was in Corps as an expert witness to try and get these two boys a reduced sentence. Their mother cooperated, and because their mother cooperated, I felt that, you know what, she's done all that she could do.
You know, these are victims. They're not criminals. These are victims, and they need help. They need rehabilitation. They're probably suffering from PTSD. They're probably very shocked as to what they saw. They were expecting one thing and probably experienced something totally different. And that's why they came back. Otherwise, they would have stayed there. 17th of February 2011, I went to Libya, and I stayed there for almost 5 months.
Fighting?
Helping out with the ambulance. It was on the, I mean, we were almost on the front line. With the guys on the northern front attacking by the coast.
And how did you feel there?
I felt I was doing something worthwhile. I felt I was, this is a country that I was born in, and its people have been oppressed for a long time. We had to get rid of Gaddafi. It was going to hurt us, but we had to do it. I mean, we had no choice in the matter. So this is outside Bin Jawad. And yeah. That's my brother. And you can see it. It's very strange, and you're getting bombs trying to land on you, trying to hit you, and we're there laughing about it. And it's just, after a while, you just become almost anaesthetised to it. It becomes normal just to hear the bombs, and you're not hearing the bombs, like, why is it so quiet for? So it's a strange experience. It's not a great experience. Some parts were quite difficult. Some moments were really difficult, But it's in your mind, we're doing this to liberate this country and liberate its people.
So what did you do in school today?
If we were taken over by some sort of dictator in this country, we'll go out to fight for the liberty of this country as well. Freedom is really important. It's a fundamental part of who we are. If you study really hard at school and you get yourself a really good job, then yeah, you can.
People are reluctant to talk about their kind of military experience in other countries. They're a little bit afraid.
The problem is that it gets criminalised. So why criminalise it? There's a massive difference between what Salman al-Abedi done and what we were doing in 2011 in Libya. When we went to Libya, we saw civilians being brutalised. We saw civilians being killed. Now, in Manchester, there was an 8-year-old girl that was killed in that. There was innocent civilians and killed. And you cannot justify that. You cannot marry the two.
The term terrorism was used by Gaddafi when he was killing his people in the streets, even though the British government and the Americans were giving air support in support of those terrorists. We have the Assad regime. He called the Free Syrian Army. Right from the beginning, he said they are a bunch of terrorists. And we, the British government and the Americans, supplied non-lethal aid to the Free Syrian Army up until 2014, until ISIS blurred the whole thing. We are, in one way or another, even now as we speak, providing air support for the YPG or the PKK, who have been designated terrorists by a NATO ally, Turkey. So what does terrorism mean? It means nothing. It has absolutely no meaning at all. If terrorism is the definition, the textbook definition of terrorism is the use of violence for political, ideological, or religious reasons, then everybody's guilty. Everybody is guilty. And it's simple as that. Everyone's a terrorist. You're never going to stop people getting radicalized. As long as there's youth, there'll be radicalism. What they mean is we don't want people to become violent extremists, which is fine. They should stick to that terminology. But they've moved across. They've introduced radicalism, extremism, indefinable terms. And I think to suggest or to tell our youth that they shouldn't be radicalized is completely wrong. They should be radicalized because radicalization brings change. Personally, if I look at Britain as a country, I love the aspect of multiculturalism in this country. I love the diversity. I love the people of this country.
The man is this way, barakallahu fikum, this way.
I've been opposed to the governments thus far, whichever side of the political divide, because of their policies. But I have an increasing respect and love of the people here, particularly after how they react to various issues, whether it's the Grenfell Tower, whether it's various atrocities and attacks. I see a great deal of good in this country. And so I was, despite all of the pessimism, I remain hopeful.
So this is a history of the UK, and this is the history of the Europe, that we are the part of the Europe's largest Eid gathering. Alhamdulillahi ala dhalik. We must be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this great blessing. Allahu Akbar.
We need to have safe spaces where people can express their feelings, express their grievances, speak frankly. And if someone is harbouring ISIS-like beliefs, let me sit down, let's chat, let's have a discussion. And I will show, or anyone can show, just through discussion. The problem is that someone will harbour these thoughts and they won't express them to anyone because they'll fear getting thrown into prison. But once they start airing those thoughts and people start challenging them, then they can start seeing the flaws in their own arguments. And that's the best way to get rid of terrorism and radicalisation. It's not about putting people behind bars. It's about changing what's up in here. If you can unlock this and enlighten it, then that's real prevent there.
Ich hoffe, dass Ihnen das Video gefallen hat. Klicken Sie hier, um das empfohlene Video anzusehen. Bitte abonnieren Sie unseren Kanal, um Updates über VPRO-Doc zu erhalten.